You know, when you look at a map of the world, all those borders between countries seem so permanent, right? Like they've always been there. But what if I told you they haven't? In fact, the whole idea of a country, a place where the people share a common identity, is actually pretty new. Today, we're going to dive into this incredibly powerful idea that literally shattered empires and redrew the map of Europe. We're talking about nationalism. Okay, so let's kick things off in the year 1848. And we're looking at this incredible print from a French artist, Frédéric Soriot. And trust me, this is way more than just a pretty picture. It's like a window into a wild, radical dream for the future, a vision of a world that was completely upside down compared to the one he was living in. I mean, just look at what Soriot packed in here. It's overflowing with symbolism. You see this long line of people? They're not soldiers. They're ordinary folks from Europe and America. And each group is proudly flying its own flag, wearing its own unique costume. They're all marching right past the Statue of Liberty. And down in the front, on the ground, you see that? Those are the shattered pieces of crowns and thrones. This is not just a parade, folks. It's a powerful statement. It's a dream of a new world where the people are in charge, where nations are free, and the old kings and queens, they're just rubble on the ground. So that's the big question, isn't it? Why was this vision so completely revolutionary back in 1848? Well, to really get it, we've got to understand the world it was rebelling against. What did Europe actually look like before this crazy idea of the nation started to catch on? All right, let's talk about the old world. Before the 1800s, if you looked at a map of Europe, you wouldn't see the neat little countries we have today. Nope, it was a world of empires, not nations. Yeah, Europe was basically this patchwork of massive empires, like the famous Habsburg Empire. And here's the key thing to understand. If you lived in that empire, you could be German-speaking, or Italian, or Hungarian, or Polish, all under one roof. You didn't share a language, a culture, or really any kind of common identity with most of your fellow subjects. So what held it all together? Just one thing: loyalty to the emperor. Your allegiance wasn't to your people or your country. It was to a single guy wearing a crown. Okay, so to really unpack this huge shift, we need to get a couple of terms straight. It's super important. First up, the state. A state is pretty simple, really. It's all about the physical stuff, a chunk of land with borders and a government that's in charge. That's it. An empire, then, is just a really big, diverse state. But a nation, well, that's something different entirely. A nation isn't about borders on a map. It's about people. It's about a shared story, a common culture, a feeling of belonging together. And here's the crucial part. A nation of people can exist even if they don't have their own state to call home. And this is where it all comes together with this game-changing idea, the nation-state. The goal was, well, it was simple, but it was absolutely earth-shattering. The idea was to make the borders of the state, the land, match up with the people of the nation. It's the idea that the people should control their own territory. This transforms folks from just being subjects of a king to being citizens of a country. And that idea, that was the dynamite that was about to blow the old empires to bits. So where did this explosive idea really catch fire for the first time? Well, for that, we have to go to France, 1789, the French Revolution. You see, the French revolutionaries were basically master nation builders. They didn't just sit around and hope people would start feeling French. No, they actively built that feeling, step by step. They came up with new ideas, like la patrie, the fatherland, to make people feel like the land was theirs, not just the king's. They introduced the idea of le citoyen, the citizen, which meant everyone had a stake in the game. They created a new flag, the tricolor, to replace the old royal symbols. They created one set of laws for everyone and pushed for one common language, French, to bring everyone together. And here's the thing. They weren't going to stop at their own borders. They saw it as their mission, their destiny even, to spread these ideas of liberty and nationhood across all of Europe. They wanted to free everyone who was still stuck living under the thumb of some king or emperor. So how did these ideas spread? Well, they were carried across the continent, often at the point of a sword, by one of the most complicated guys in all of history, Napoleon Bonaparte. And man, was he a walking contradiction. On the one hand, Napoleon was this incredible reformer. As he conquered Europe, he brought his Napoleonic Code, which was all about equality before the law. He got rid of the old feudal system and serfdom. But on the other hand, he was a total tyrant. He ended democracy in France, censored the press, slapped on heavy taxes, and forced people he conquered to join his army. So you see the contradiction? He spread the ideas of the revolution, but he absolutely crushed the actual freedom that came with it. Okay, so after Napoleon is finally defeated in 1815, the old school powers of Europe, we're talking Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, they all get together in Vienna, and they have one single goal: to somehow stuff this revolutionary genie back into its bottle. Their plan was pretty straightforward. Hit the rewind button. Let's go back to the way things were. They put the old royal families back on their thrones, they redrew the map of Europe specifically to keep France from getting too powerful again, and their whole new conservative order was designed to stamp out two really dangerous ideas: liberalism, the idea that people have rights, and nationalism, the idea that nations should rule themselves. To the old empires, these two ideas were pure poison. And to stay in power, these newly restored monarchies, they cracked down hard. They didn't allow any kind of dissent. They set up spy networks. They censored newspapers, books, songs, you name it. They were absolutely determined to snuff out any little spark of revolution before it could turn into a wildfire. But it was just too late. You can't put an idea like that back in the box. The dream of the nation state, of people ruling themselves, it was already out there, and it was spreading like crazy, especially among the rising middle class. It was becoming an unstoppable force. So, since you couldn't protest out in the open, the revolutionaries just went underground. Secret societies started popping up all over Europe, with people joining up to fight for liberty and create those nation-states they dreamed of, like a united Italy or a single German nation. And one of the biggest names in this whole underground movement was an Italian revolutionary named Giuseppe Mazzini. Now, Mazzini was all in on this. He truly believed that nations were the natural way to organize humanity, almost like it was God's plan. And you can bet the old guard was terrified of him. The Austrian Chancellor Metternich, one of the most powerful men in Europe, called Mazzini the most dangerous enemy of our social order. And he wasn't exaggerating. He knew that if Mazzini's ideas won, his entire world of empires would come crashing down. And even with all that repression, the pressure just kept building. It was like a pressure cooker. In 1830, France had another revolution, which kicked off a whole chain reaction of revolts elsewhere. And it all leads up to this massive climax in 1848, a year they called the Springtime of Peoples, when this huge wave of revolutions just swept across the entire continent. We're talking Paris, Budapest, Berlin, everywhere. And boom, that brings us right back to where we started, with that painting from 1848. You see now? It wasn't just some fantasy, some artist's daydream. It was a manifesto. It was a picture of the exact future that people all across Europe were literally fighting and dying for in the streets in that very same year. It was a dream becoming real. Ultimately, this idea of the nation-state would win. It's what created the world we live in today, a world of independent countries. It promised unity. It promised liberty. But as those old empires fell and new nations rose from the ashes, this powerful idea of nationalism also opened the door to brand new and even more devastating types of conflict. But that's a story for another time.